Greetings from Dr. B at STEM Sherpa. We're going to continue our discussion of how parents can be better teachers of creativity for themselves and their students. The students will never see this video. Parents, look through the video, take some thoughts, do some of the activities I mentioned, and then go out and practice and stimulate your children. Remember, they're great copiers. They learned how to speak, to walk, to talk by copying you. Let's trace back a very common item that you may think has been around for years, and it has actually been around for over a century, but it has moved along in small steps to what we have, the modern light bulb, which this is not. Let's start off with Edison, who may have observed that when something burnt, it gave off light, but it was also consumed. So maybe his first idea was to find something that would glow but not be consumed. Eventually he took some carbon filaments, put them inside a bulb, a glass bulb, and then evacuated the bulb so there was no oxygen for it to burn, but it would glow. That first light bulb might have glowed for 100 hours and then it burned out. He improved the vacuum, but his biggest improvement was to put other material inside there to get it to glow, and a common one was metals, which will glow. Maybe you've seen it inside of a toaster, but it isn't consumed, kept in a vacuum, and it will glow for hundreds of hours. He invented a company called the Edison General Electric Company, and they use DC current, which is kept at a constant voltage, and to run light bulbs. He invented switches, fuses, how to wire a house, so he could plant a dynamo in the center of the city and have a short distance for that electricity to pass along, because as DC current passes along, it loses its strength and it warms up the bulb, and by the time it goes a great distance, it had quite a voltage drop, which is bad if you're transmitting it over long distances. But he stuck with that until a young inventor named Tesla came along and said, let's send alternating current down, and the high and the low will cancel out, and you don't have voltage drops over long distance, not much of a voltage drops. Edison refused to do that, and when General Electric finally gave in and started producing equipment for alternating electricity, he told them, take my name off. He never adapted to alternating electricity. And he went on and did other things, of course. So the General Electric Company kept improving the light bulbs until we get something like this. But there's still a problem. As the electricity goes through the tungsten filament, it will slowly dissipate that tungsten filament, and you start getting this blackening up here. But the worst is when the filament gets thinner and thinner, the electricity heats it up more as it goes through that thinner and thinner filament in the side of the light bulb, and then finally it gets hot enough that it melts the tungsten, and you will get a pop, and you'll deposit a lot more tungsten on the light bulb, and it burns out because it's no longer connected. But the General Electric Company was always happy to sell you another light bulb. They kept making improvements, but the basic light bulb didn't improve for about 100 years. In my first physics course in the 60s, my instructor said, someone is going to invent a light bulb, a light source that doesn't get so hot, because most of the energy goes into the glow and heating up that element, and if you've ever touched a light bulb, it hurts. If you can make a cool light bulb, think of all the applications, such as an operating room where they have all these lights shining down on the patient. They don't like that, and until finally someone recognized that if you take certain material and run a small current through it, it will glow, and if you encase it in plastic, it doesn't get that hot, So you can put a lot of them together and you have what are called LEDs. The first ones were red, and maybe you've seen those in calculators, but they got better. The improvement was to make yellows and blues. When you combine them, you get white or yellowish light, depending on how you want to put them together. There'll be other improvements in a light bulb. I don't know what they'll do. This light bulb now, today's LED, uses very little electricity. This is a 60-watt light bulb, and it will produce more light, or about as much light, as a 6-watt LED. And we're saving 10 times the electricity, 10 times the energy, because we don't heat up an LED. You can touch an LED light. If you have Christmas tree lights or some type of small lights, you can touch them, and they're not hot. So that is one application of how small incremental changes go from a 100-hour light bulb that uses a lot of electricity, relatively speaking, to a modern LED which will burn for a lot longer because it's not evaporating, dissipating its filament. It's not a filament, it's the material that they've had glowing in it. There are several books you may want to consider that go down this path of step-by-step invention. One is Creative Inc. Or if you're interested in the arts, Leonardo da Vinci. What were the steps that he took to improve his pictures? Or you can look at one of my books that I have called Think Like Einstein, in which I take a lot of different processes and stepwise through them. And one of the stepwise I take through is creating or exploring the Martian language, and which would be very useful if you ever go to Mars. You can speak the language before you get there, and you don't have to learn how to speak Martian, if you believe me. Take a look at some books. There's a lot of good books, but watch all the processes that are going on and how things slowly change and are made better. Nevertheless, take a few minutes, go to stemsherpa.com, look at, for instance, the books that I have out on inventing things, and watch and participate in some of those. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week, perhaps when we'll go back and look at the drinking bird